Monster Hunter Wilds is a deep and complex game, packed with mechanics, intricate systems, and layered menus that can feel overwhelming at first. But with the right settings, you can streamline your experience, reduce unnecessary friction, and learn about options you might not even know exist. In this video, we'll go over the essential settings you should tweak right away to make your journey smoother from the start. Let's dive in. The first option here is probably the first annoying thing you will encounter in the game. If you haven't attacked for a bit and the game considers you out of combat, it will auto-sheath your weapon like this. Really annoying, and it's on by default, so I suggest you disable it. If you go to System, Options, under Controls, the first page, you will find auto-sheath and you can turn it off here. Also remember, if you sprint when your weapon is out, you will sheath it anyway. The mini-map and the detailed map are super busy already, and if you're new, you don't need the confusion of meaningless rotation, so I suggest you set it to fixed. If we go here into Options, Game Settings, the first page, mini-map rotation, set it to fixed, and in the next page, the detailed map, set it to fixed too. Now I can move around without the mini-map rotating. And if I open the detailed map, I can zoom in, out, tilt it, and it won't go spinning. This one is a preference, but at least you should know it's there. You can show or hide your head armor, like in most games, but there's also an option to only hide it during cutscenes. There's quite a bit of dialogue and cutscenes in the game, and if you're interested in them, it might look too silly depending on what you're wearing. So I think most people would prefer to keep it off. Like this would look really silly in a serious cutscene. When your hunter is obscured from view by objects or monsters, this option will show you your hunter in a silhouette. On page 3, under Game Settings, right under the previous one, you can change its color. Here's how white looks like, for example, or we can change it to yellow, blue, black, or red. In my opinion, red seems to be the one that stands out the most. The game is not optimized at all in terms of performance, at least on PC where I'm playing it, so it's better to hide whatever's not necessary. This option comes in handy. You can hide other hunters' secrets. There is more stuff to render that can be confusing for no good reason. Along with that, you can disable ally hit effects and ally critical effects. Maybe keep only the critical ones in case that's something you'd want to know about. But in general, those are options to improve performance and reduce visual clutter if you play multiplayer. Now, on the topic of mounts, this tip is probably the most important one you need to know about riding the damn thing. If you're irritated by how erratic your mount is by default, and you can't seem to ever fully control it, it's because the defaults suck, and the whole setup is so unnecessarily complicated. I even watched some guides about this, and I didn't see any who explained this in a way that fully made sense. So let me try to explain it. When you get on your mount and it starts running around aimlessly like this, you think you should disable Auto Explore. Let's pay attention to what this says. On means that your mount goes in Auto Explore mode if no waypoint is set. And off says it will not enter Auto Explore even if no waypoint is set. So what if it's set? This option is irrelevant. And you often have a waypoint. Essentially, if you hit up and you have a waypoint, it will auto-move towards it. And that's the part you want to be in control of. And the default settings make it so that if you have a waypoint or you don't, your mount behaves nearly the same, and it's mostly out of your control. But setting this up properly will allow you to have control over both scenarios, and it will make sense. So let's set it up properly. We put Auto-Explore off to make the initial distinction. Now check this out. I have no waypoint, I hit up, it picks me up, and starts running, even though we set Auto Explore off and we don't have a waypoint. So let's get back into the settings, under Controls, page 2, and go to Call Secret Controls, and change it to Type 3. That gives us a combo between Type 1, which is still enabled, but a distinction where if we hold circle, we call the secret into manual mode, which means it will move only under our control, like any game mount. Let's try it. I hold circle, and it's still running around like a lunatic. Now to fix this, we go back to Settings, the same page, and we can find this genius option here, where manual controls, by default, are auto controls. But now if we change that, it will all make sense. So let's review all the scenarios with all those 3 settings set as we just did. Without a waypoint, I hit up, my mount picks me up, and it's fully under my control. If I hit circle, it's the same. Now let's say I have a waypoint. Here, for example. There it is in this direction. If I hit up, my mount will take me to it.
I'll go on ahead then.
While still having a waypoint, if I hit circle, it picks me up and it's actually in manual mode and fully under my control.
Some materials too.
Now while I'm on my mount in manual mode, if I have a waypoint, I can press up and it auto moves towards it. If I press down, it stops and goes back to manual control. That's it. I hope this somehow makes sense and helps you take full control over this crazy bird. If you're comparing 2 weapons like this, for example, you can see that most weapons wipe the floor with the dual blades. This might be misleading if you want to know the real raw attack power of a weapon. Each weapon has a built-in bloat value, or coefficient like they call it. It basically accounts for hit rate to give an illustration of DPS more than raw damage. So slower weapons will have a higher bloat value. If you don't want to see that and want to compare raw damage, you can go in Options, Game Settings, 3rd page, and at the bottom here, this Weapon Attack Power display, and change it to display without the coefficient. If you go back to compare, you can see that the comparison looks a lot different. Radio menu and loadout customization is worth a dedicated video. But a good quality of life option here for the radio menu is that by default, when you flick to a choice and release, it uses it right away. While that's super fast, if you have multiple entries in your menu and you flick overshoots, you'll end up using something you didn't want to use and actually waste more time. There's an option for this under Controls, page 1, Item Use Controls. And this will allow you to confirm your choice by pressing the analog stick in. A tad bit slower, but way more precise and reliable. Now let's look at some targeting and camera controls. When you hit R3 to focus on a target, you get locked onto it like this. It gets a bit sticky, it will allow you to flick away for a little bit, but it will pull you back to the target constantly, as you can see. You have to pull really hard away to break it, and then you lose the targeting and have to focus on the target again. So if you want to run from an attack or look around for something to grab, this will resist you, as you can see here. The option I suggest is under Camera, 2nd page, and is to disable the focus camera. Once we disable this, we are now working with a target camera control type, which is this list. There are a few options here. You can play around, and depending on your style and preference, you can come back here and tweak it. The default type lets you tap L1 once to focus on the monster and tap twice to look where your hunter is facing. I personally rarely use this second part. I only want to tap L1 when I want to target the monster, so I'm using type 3. Keeps it simple. Now I can focus the target and still freely move the camera. Tap L1 and the camera flicks right to it, which also leads us to target filtering. It's safer to obviously put this on large monsters only. You don't really care to lock onto small trash mobs, so I have this set to large monsters. Another option here, aim focus mode. It's probably better to change this to toggle. This is really helpful, especially for the insect glaive and actually melee weapons in general. And you can still keep it on hold for ranged weapons separately if you have a ranged secondary and that's your preference. But this way you can just tap it once and then freely move around and look around without having to hold the button for that long. A relevant option here is camera speed in focus, especially when set to toggle. It's better to increase this generally and when your weapon is drawn, which is the focus mode in this case. This makes it smoother and quicker, especially if you're using a controller. And the most important option here in the camera settings for sure is the camera distance zoom. At 1, this is way too close and doesn't give you a comfortable view of your character or surrounding. So I suggest to set it to 10 for a better field of view. This is what it looks like at 1, and that's 10. There's also camera shake and sway. In many encounters in this game, the shake can be really too much, so it's probably better to tone these options down. I personally hate them, so I have them set to 1. There's obviously a ton more settings and tips. This game is massive, but I hope as a new player just starting the game, you find those tips useful and hopefully they make your experience smoother and more enjoyable in Monster Hunter. Thank you for your time, and if you found this guide helpful, please remember to hit the like, sub and ring the bell for more content like this. I'll see you on the next hunt.
It's so fragrant. Do you use a special kind of flower?